Schy, welcome to the Golf Parent.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We battled through a little bit of technical difficulties. This is try number four, but I think we got it this time.
I'm rooting. Hopefully, we just didn't jinx it.
Not at all. Okay, so like we were talking a little bit about Avoda, and I'm kind of curious about the brand. But for those that don't fully understand, like Avoda is a brand that you've created for Bryson DeChambeau, and you've been working with Bryson since he was very young, like all the way up through to when he turned pro. Can you maybe just start there and just talk a little bit about
Yeah,
your relationship with
we
Bryson?
didn't create the brand for Bryson. We created the golf club for Bryson. We were the only crazy company that was willing to kind of go down the curve face road. And so the CEO or president of the company was one of my students and is one of my students and came from England, never left, and started this little golf club company because he wanted to figure out a way to pay for his golf. And so he knew Bryson, and he was around when I was trying to figure out the curve face stuff. And he, we kind of like, hey, let's do it ourselves. And that's kind of how we, going back in time, it was always the little small company, us at the tent trying to figure stuff out. So it was a great synergy. Um, we did the whole project in about 3 months, and we had some hiccups, definitely, but he ended up playing the clubs at Augusta, shot 65 first round. The rest was history. He's played the clubs as of up till last week. He'd been playing the same set of golf clubs for over a year. So trust me, those clubs should have been out of play probably 6 months ago with, the grooves are worn out. He does tend to hit a lot of golf balls. So, and so on. But yeah, it was a cool journey and a lot of fun, and made him happy, and so that's kind of how it all worked out.
Do you think the curved club face is going to be the future?
That's a good question. It's definitely a player in the future for sure, and I think um, just as a little footnote, when Bryson was going through the testing, he kind of was like vacillating, do I, don't I, do I, don't I, and I literally pulled the clubs out that were his clubs, of course, and started hitting them. Kind of gave him the man. I can't believe how straight these things go. Next thing I know, he's hitting them, and 35 minutes later, his pings were out of the bag and the Avodas were in the bag. So I think depending on your club head speed, obviously, if you're above, let's say, 80 miles an hour with an 8 iron, then yeah, it's definitely an advantage. I think for sure. I
Why
think
does that
as
make a
an
difference?
well, because
The,
when
like the
you're
club
hitting
head
it
speed.
all, when you have a curve face club, and you're for example, a tour player typically hits it right on the nut all the time, right? And so, Bryson obviously he tends to miss it a little bit because he swings that hard. But let's say the typical even a good amateur hits it, it's a bigger sweet spot, right? It's a bigger um, air. And so having that bigger air with the face curved properly, you're going to hit it straighter. I mean, it's just a fact. And that's just the way it is. So it'll reduce on the toe, it's going to reduce curve left. On the heel, it's going to reduce curve to the right. So the simplest way to answer that question. And again, it progressively goes. There's more curve on the face, the less loft. As you reduce loft, there's the curve flattens. Why? Because the speed again, same thing.
And do you think though the one length club shafts, like up until what is it from like your wedges all the way up to maybe your 5 iron or so? Do
Yeah.
you think that's
So
going to catch on?
yeah. So well, it's there's definitely a big following of same length golf clubs for sure. Let's say 3 iron all the way down to a lob wedge. So there's a pretty big following there. Avoda's done both, where they do the same length all the way across and also a combo set as well. So lob wedge, 8 iron, same length, and then progressively a little bit longer. And again, a lot of that it's preference and or club head speed. So if you're somebody who has a bunch of club head speed, same length all the way across can be very good.
If I was to bring you a Rod Junior right now, would you lean towards getting them into the one length shafts, or at least letting them try it out, or is that
100%.
really
100%.
really
Yeah, no doubt about it.
interesting? Okay,
But
let's
let's just say we're got to go back in time. Bobby Jones
yeah.
won the grant. So when clubs were made from, let's say, hickory, right? They were all the main set because there was no club limit back then. But the for example, the set that Bobby Jones won the Grand Slam with was same length. In fact, the almost the identical specs to Bryson's original irons that we made, which is quite interesting.
I don't think many people know that. That
Yeah,
is interesting.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So,
It's been
and
said,
that
but
was
yeah, it's a long time ago.
just because of just the economies of scale. Like it was just everybody just had the one shaft that
Yeah,
they make in
that just
Hickory and
because
just
the way it was made, everything was very custom back then. Well, if you look at the way golf is now, it's very custom. And so, for from 1920-ish to let's say 1980, you pretty much bought a 3 iron through pitching wedge, that or 2 iron through pitching wedge is what you bought. It just set of 8. Right now, you can buy one club at a time, literally having it custom done. So there's guys on tour that have same length, let's say a 5 iron, a 4 iron, same length, just different loft, same head weights. So, which is interesting. That's not talked about very often. Sometimes you'll see wedges from, let's say, the 50 to the 60, same length. Whatever it might be. It doesn't, not a requirement to have it at 37 and a half. I've had guys that are 36 all the way across because they had a lot of club head speed. They just felt like, well, I mean, the club I control the most is my wedge. If I could control my 3 iron like a wedge, why wouldn't I do that? So, again, it's about launch and how far you hit it and spin and stuff. But again, it's custom. So everything in today's world, if you're a good player, you should be looking at it that way. I'm not a swing weight guy, so I'm sure I'll make all your golf club guys. I hate swing weight. I'm listening. I'm hearing it more and more now. Finally, builders and people are coming around to, I hate to say, my way of thinking. It's about performance. So the idea that your clubs feel the same and they're different lie angles and different lengths and different weights, and you're telling me because it says D1 on it as a swing weight, they all feel the same. You're Looney Tunes, right? In reality, a club that, let's say, a 3 iron that weighs the head is 280, the shaft's 100, whatever down there, and it's 500 grams, and you go all the way across, and every club weighs 500 grams. Well, that legitimately you could say they feel the same. And so, but I'm not like I said, I'm not a swing weight guy. Again, you see it on tour all the time, lead tape, whatever. Guys are always trying to find performance benefits first, way over the, oh, wait a minute, my club's now a D2 and not a D1. I mean, it's just crazy.
um going back for a second for the shaft lanes. Why did we go then to shorter shaft lanes for like the
Mass
wedges?
production, mass production. After Bobby Jones won the Grand Slam, everybody wanted to play golf. And that's when steel shafts came into play. And so Bobby Jones, I think it was with Spalding, said, well, we'll make the club that has the most loft shortest and the club that has the least loft longer, and that'll fit everybody. And that's what you did. You just went into a store and you bought the 3 iron through wedge. Nothing was fit. There were no lie angles back then. There weren't lie angles changes until the 80s.
Okay, I feel like I've been fed a lie here for a second because it's a perfect case that we don't question the norms. We don't question things, right? And it's like, yes, I bought a set hot off the rack, from pitching wedge all the way to my 3 iron. I lost my 3 iron on the first round of golf, so I've only got a 4 iron. But I never questioned. It's just that's golf. My pitching wedge is shorter than my 4 iron or my three
Right.
iron, and you're saying that there isn't necessarily a clear reason why that's the case.
Well, the only reason that we have variable length clubs was to be able to sell everybody the same set. So up until, let's say, 1980, everybody bought this. You would have a ladies version, which would be shorter, and then you had a men's version, which would be longer, right? You did have flexes, like a ladies flex, or soft flex, a regular flex, a senior flex, a stiff, and an X, right? But they would all still be the same. It's all the same, right? And so because that was easy to sell. And so when you walked into a shop, there was only one SKU number for a set. And then nowadays, when you walk in, you could choose, hey, I want a 6 iron through my a wedge, and then I'm going to buy a 5 hybrid, 4 hybrid, three. You see what I'm saying? So
I
you're
do.
able to mix in much better, more effectively now. Not only that, you can actually have it custom done, where you could actually go to hopefully somebody that's qualified, a good fitter, and they could figure out. Like when I fit somebody, I tend to fit a smaller set makeup, and as they get better or figure out what they need, like I was at the U.S. Open, at the Women's Open last week, we needed to bring in a 7 wood, right? Well, what club are we going to take out? Let's take out the 5 iron, whatever. And so now you have, again, you have this quiver, and you're going, okay, for this week, this setup, I need XYZ golf clubs, right? And so, and obviously, as a better player, you're going to do that. As you're more beginner, it's going to be a little different. For me, as teaching a beginner and going through a fitting process with a less skilled golfer, have less set makeup or a smaller set makeup, then they come back and say, you know what, I need more loft from 160 yards. Well, great, let's do a 9 wood, right? Maybe they do that. Or hey, they're getting better. Their club head speed's picking up. Guess what? You need a 5 iron now, things like that. So you're able to do that today in today's fitting world, where 1980 to 1920 you weren't able to do that.
What I don't understand is if it originally with Bobby Jones was all one length golf clubs, wouldn't that be the easiest thing to mass produce? Just everything's just one size and you put every
Well, that's
club in
the
there?
that's the point, though. It had to be cut. It's custom, so everybody is different. And the idea was mass produce. Everybody's basically, whether you're 6 feet tall or 5 feet tall, you're basically buying the same 3 iron through pitching wedge set makeup. That's how they did it.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's
So
how they did it. Yeah, it was, back then they were custom when you were customizing a hickory club, or it was a one off, and a player would say, I want my Ginty to be this. I want my mid iron to be this, and that's how they did it. And that you just can't do that in you couldn't at the time, couldn't do that in mass production.
hmm,
And,
okay.
and you have to remember too, back then, most of the time the sets were being sold at golf clubs, more or less.
Hmm.
There weren't like a Dick's Sporting Good. There weren't, where you could go to Kmart and buy, right? The Kmarts and whatever they were back, let's say in the 50s and 60s, where you could literally walk into a store and buy a whole set of golf clubs, and you were on your way to the golf course. That was kind of the way it worked.
Earlier this year, there's been in the news was Rory's driver wasn't conforming. What does that mean
So
when
it's
a club's
it's
not
it
conforming?
flattened. So drivers flatten. So when it flattens, then it becomes more trampoliny, right? That's the easiest way to say it. So it becomes non-conformant as soon as it flattens. Now, so when it's more round, right, which it only has, a typical driver has 12 inches of bulge. Okay. That's the tip. Like Bryson's has more. Bryson has 8.5 inches of bulge. So it would look like that. Whereas most drivers in today's world are flatter. And so what happens is over time it starts flat. It actually compresses, but then it stays flat. As soon as it gets to flat, they have a measurement. It's basically it's just how fast the ball comes off the face, more or less. That it trampolines more. And now the ball goes off too fast. It's it's uh it's breaking the limitations of how fast it's supposed to come off the face. So typically, if the easiest way to explain it is if they have a driver fixed, they shoot it at 100 miles an hour on the face, then the ball comes off. It can only come off basically at 82 miles an hour. It can't be trampoline at 100. If it comes, well, actually, if it comes off at 84, it's illegal, or it's a non-conforming.
So they shoot a ball at it. So a stationary driver.
Yeah, it's another machine that does it, but that theoretically, that's really what it's measuring.
Gotcha. So if we wanted a game improvement driver, we would want a more trampoline flat face as opposed to
Correct.
a
Correct. And
concave or whatever.
the only person that does that is Crank. So Crank does have drivers that, let's say, for the person that's, the average everyday Joe and can only swing at 70 miles an hour, he
Yeah.
has a face that's super trampolining. If you and I hit it, I'd collapse the face after 5 hits. It would literally just blow up, right? So the face, let's say for me, or let's say somebody like Bryson, who's at 130 miles an hour, so he has more bulge on his face and roll on his face. So obviously, if he hits it off center, it tends to go back to straight. It doesn't overhook or overfade or overcut. And the face is stronger. So as soon as you start making it more cylindrical, I guess is the word, it becomes stronger, right? And so versus flat, if I give you a flat and start hitting it, it immediately is going to start, you know, um, degrading for sure. So what was happening with Bryson before he went to crank was the face that he would, because he would go hit 400 balls in one setting. Well, they'd give him a brand new driver. Oh, this is it. It's great. And then an hour later, it's going all over the place. Why? Because the face was flattening, you know. And of course, at that time, they were all saying, "No, it's your golf swing." And he was convinced, "No, it's my golf swing." Once he realized that it wasn't his golf swing and it was the equipment, life changed as we know it.
When did you start working with Bryson?
He was 11, maybe. I'd known him since he was 7 or 8 years old. So I grew up with his dad. His dad and I played junior golf together, so we knew each other a long time. And then he started hanging out in the tent when he was probably 10. We call it the tent. That's where I taught and have taught out of for the last 30 years.
And the tent is the performance institute that you have.
Yeah, yeah, that's a fancy name for the tent.
I like the tent more.
Yeah, yeah, that's what everybody calls it for sure.
So you've worked with a lot of like you've helped junior golfers basically from junior all the way to get into the pros,
Right.
including Bryson and a handful of others. What do you instill in them early on that gives them a better chance to be able to reach those elite levels?
Well, work ethic number one. So they have to they have to work hard. And so learning how to do that is not, and I think in today's world is not so easy. And so there are some kids that are very hard worker, they're hard workers naturally. There's some that have more talent, but you see they struggle with the work part, you know. And so my belief, and I've always said this with Bryson and every good junior that I've had and professional, that hard work pays off. It always does. In one way or the other, hard work will always pay off. And so, there's a motto at the tent, where, it just takes 1,000 balls a day, you know, and people laugh. I go, it's a true statement. The guy that did hit 1,000 balls is out on tour right now. So, I haven't had very many do that. And so Bryson was certainly one. He was not afraid of hard work. Still, obviously, for the most part, is not afraid of hard work. He's certainly a guy that'll go out and hit 500 balls in a setting, no problem. And that's just with a driver, and so on. So I think that's the first thing, is instilling hard work. The next part is being very curious and very inquisitive. And so the funny part about the tent in the let's say those days when Bryson and all the other juniors back then, all I would ever hear is Mike, 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 because I was by myself at the time, so I was the only one teaching. And so all I'd ever hear, Mike, 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 come watch, Mike, come watch. What about this? What about that? All day long, which was the biggest thing that I tried to instill in the kids, was being inquisitive, try to learn, and don't be afraid of experimenting. And so the hard part in today's world, and Bryson's dad hated me when I was doing that, and in a nice way, he hated me, um, was, "What are you doing to my kid?" And I said, "Look, we have to let him go down these roads or rabbit holes, whatever you want to call it, so he can kind of check it off. That's what he needs." And so if we're saying that, okay, he's good right now, let's keep him in this little box, and that'll get him a scholarship. You see, Bryson and I made a commitment that we were not going to do that. And I said, there's going to be times where you're going to struggle because you're going to experiment with something, and it's not going to be what you want, and it might affect your scores, right? Certainly going to one length irons obliterated his chances to go to college, right? And trust me, it did. There were a lot of coaches like, check off that kid, he's done, right? But we made a commitment, and I made a commitment to Bryson for sure, that I'll try to I'll try to grab a hold of his feet so he doesn't go down the rabbit holes too deep. And so we can experiment, we can test, like he really wanted to be Mo Norman for a while, and so on. And that it just didn't work. And then of course, the one length stuff, his dad was like going, "What are you doing to my kid? No way he's going to do that." Well, the rest is history. So, but all of that enabled him to become the player he's become, though. There's no doubt in my mind. I think if he would have been in a normal setting and a guy going, because I fight with pros all the time. Yeah, the one length don't work and the big grips don't work and whatever. It's like, you're so limiting. in that way. And I think there's a lot of kids that if you let them expand their minds, they can be much better players. And in the end, in order to be successful when you're playing, you need to have a mind that's expanding and learning. What about this shot? Maybe I could try this shot, you know? And so I think a lot of people, when they call, let's say, for example, Bryson, the scientist, they don't realize how much of an artist he is when he plays as well. And so that was another thing I always tried to instill in him, especially when he got in tough situations. And, I go, hey, what about this little shot? Yeah, 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 that looks really awesome. Yeah, I can hit this low out of the rough cut shot over the trees, things like that. Well, that's how you become a great player.
Hmm. So experimentation, a curiosity, and hard work. Those are three components. I mean, I love that because I mean, this is my favorite question to ask is that if you were to look at what those intangible skill sets are that separate the elite juniors or golfers from everybody else, those are three fantastic ones. Is there any that we're missing?
Well, the idea that there's no such thing as I can't. The
Mm.
one thing is not allowed around me in my setting is I can't. I mean, all the way from equipment. I've never said that. No, I can't do that. I can't make one leg clubs. Think about that for a second. Had I done that, right? Which pretty much what everybody was saying. And so the I mean I hate the movie, Once Upon a Time in Mexico, right? The I'm either a Mexican or Mexican. And so that was a joke, right? One girl I remember she said to me, she goes, I'm an American, and so on and so on. And I'm a Canadian and not a Canadian, right? Or whatever. So, but again, it was the idea that there is no I can't. And that's the hardest thing with parents. I think they're not trying to be negative, but they end up being negative and they end up putting doubt in their kids' minds. That's a tough one. And so how you learn to talk in the environment that where it's not to say, well, let's try this shot, I can't. Okay. Or are you saying you don't want to do it because it's not the right shot for the moment? Or that you need to go, I can't choose that shot right now because I need to go work on it. It needs to be a shot I need to know. And so it becomes a positive versus the negative. And so I think that's a big thing. And it's a hard one for parents. It's so easy to get you're not trying to be negative, but it's so easy to be negative and you have no idea how it affects the player.
Let's linger on that for a second. So are you saying that the phrasing that we as parents use when we're talking to our kid either in a tournament or outside is skewed to the negative kind of
Yeah.
phrasing
So
of something?
yeah, so I'll give you an example. So at the U.S. Open last week, my player, her dad caddied for her. I would, and again, great experience, 100% behind it. But it's a very, very difficult, especially when the dad's a new caddy, right? But it's already the toughest environment on the planet. Now I get to go be a caddy to my kid, and it's my kid, but I need to be the caddy, and I like trying to convince the kid, Sarah, her name is like, hey, you're the boss. Bottom line is you have to remember you are the boss. You're making the decisions. Her dad a number of times said, don't hit it here, right? Immediately that's red flag in her brain and that gets her
Planting
negative
that
and
seed. Yeah.
right. And I tried to help him understand because we talked about it, right? We definitely tried to talk about it. He got a little defensive, but it's is what it is. And she made the comment, you make these, don't do that. Well, kids heard that their whole life, right? Don't eat that, don't go there, don't, and it's always been basically it's protective but it's also negative. And so the thing to help the parent was to understand you can say the same thing, but say it completely different by going like, here's the landing zone where you need to hit, right? Positive, right? And then you could say, hey, the crown is 10 feet past the flag. That's not a negative. That's just being aware, right? And so just a completely different way to communicate. It just from a parent's perspective, it's very difficult because they hate to say they think they could pull off the shot, right? They know, right? I'm not going to hit it there. You think your kid didn't know not to hit it there, right? And so it's a very difficult it's a problem that I hear and see and I listen to the kids because they come back and talk to me about it, you know. and then trying to help the parent, communicate that process. It's very, very, very difficult.
What are the top three things that you hear from your junior golf students that they almost complain about their parents, that the parents may not even be intentionally doing or aware that they're doing, that negatively affects the kid's performance?
Um, Again, it goes back to the don't do this or don't do that. I think most of my kids are pretty, their relationships with their parents for the most part pretty good. I think too much involvement. It's when does it come a time where the parent kind of lets go? And I've always said this sometimes to a lot of parents over the years, that you need to be the parent, not the coach. So either I'm the coach, you be the parent, or you be the coach and the parent. You don't need me around. If you want to keep coming, I'll certainly be encouraging and whatever I can. But in the end, the best thing for your child will be to try to separate those two things. And that sometimes is very, very difficult for some parents, because some parents are just not willing to relinquish that. So I think
Yeah.
that's probably the biggest complaint, that kids just wish they could make some of those decisions on their own.
Being allowed to fail, being allowed to experiment and just kind of figure it out, get
Yeah.
that autonomy and that
Yeah.
agency.
Yeah. And the other hard part is even though that's what they want, but then you can also see it in them that they really truly want to please their parents, which I really appreciate, right? I want to make my dad happy. I want to make my mom and dad happy. I want to, appease them. I want to please them. I want them to be proud of me. So I've got to listen, even though I don't want to listen. As as you grow up, there always comes that separation time for the most part, and it's not a bad thing. It's just the part of life. And so, but they experience it, I think, much earlier for the most. I mean, 13, 14 years old, 12 years old, especially when you have a kid that all of a sudden goes silent. That's a tough one. Where they're not. You can tell they've been told to do something. They want to please, but they don't want to do it because they think it's wrong. And so it's a very conflicting process, you know? And so that's a tough one. That's a hard one.
We're my talking off air that you recently had to fire one of the top junior golfer families from your stable. Why did you do that?
Well, not divulging a lot of it, but sometimes you just have to say, you can't be here anymore. So it for the most part, the times that it's happened to me over the years, because I've been doing this now 40 something years, that it's usually a parent who tends to be fairly abusive in a way, whether it's verbal or whatever. But it becomes such a negative, toxic environment for my players and my students and coaches. Certainly not good when you have other pros from other golf courses calling you and saying, "Hey, so and so's out on the green balling," and dad's there calling her every name in the book, or person every name in the book, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, "Hey, call the police." That's all I can tell you. And so a lot of it typically is just because, again, either I'm the coach or I'm not the coach. If I'm the coach, I'm the teacher, and so on. Let me do my job. I can help that process. But if the parent is always going to be the teacher, the coach, the whatever, and if there's respect there, that's fine. But soon as, in my mind, that there's no respect for me and my environment, that it's time to, cut the tie, regardless of the type of player they are. So, I mean, I've had two players that were pretty much the number one players, and said, bye bye. And so it's a hard thing, it's a tough thing, but it's, just it can't be. It affects the other kids that are involved, and so I wish I could sit there and tell the parent that this probably is going to end poorly, and it has a number of times. I've certainly been around when the end result was not good, and certainly wasn't what their dream was. To where the kid's not playing golf anymore, and there's total separation from the parent and the child. And so, but they get so, these parents sometimes get so consumed in their child's performance, and then also believing that my kid can be that next Tiger, that next number one. And if I just push them so XYZ, that's what's going to make it, And sometimes, and it's so rare that that obviously can happen. Um, I don't, I've never heard stories of Tiger's dad ever being, quote, I know he was tough on him in a lot of ways, but not to where I think he made his child cry, and I can't, it's too hard for me. If I see kids crying, it's like, wait a minute. My requirement, I've had some really good kids from the time when they were, let's say, starting at 7 or 8, maybe 8 years old. They're already playing 30 tournaments a year. My goal at the end of that, let's say when they turn 14, 15, going through puberty, whatever, that they love the game. That's always been my requirements when parents ask me, what do you think, how do you think this process is going to go? My goal is to make sure that kid loves the game no matter what. So sometimes when a kid comes to the tent, it's not about learning the golf swing, it's about having a good time. There's nothing wrong with that. That's, the game has to be fun. Listen to Rotella now. Rotella's talking, that's all he talks about is having fun. Having fun, having the number one priority when you tee it up is that I'm going to have fun today, because that truly is what it's all about. If you're going to play great golf, you have to love to do this. There's no doubt about it.
So we've talked about basically an ideal mindset and some of the ideal characteristics for the junior golfer. If you were to 3D print the perfect golf parent, what would be some of the attributes or skills or personality traits that you would put into that?
Make sure the kid has food. Make sure the kid has some money to go buy food, right? Make sure you drop them off, and make sure you pick them up, and then make sure you ask them, do you have a great time today? Are you getting better? And how can I help you get better? I think, if you could learn as a parent to do that early on, I think you probably are. That's the blueprint, in my mind. Is that, again, I always tell kids this too, by the way. Have you told your mom and your dad, number one, I love you, number one, number two, how much you appreciate what they're doing for you? Because if they're not, I mean, I literally walk them to their parent and say, now, what are you going to say? And why are you going to say it? Because look how fortunate you are to be here, and to be out playing golf and doing all this. That they have to be, sometimes, kids forget that, hey, thanks, mom, for dropping me off, or thanks for just, hey, oh, I'm 12 years old. You actually stay out here 6 hours while I practice and go play. Think about that for a second. You think your mom could be doing something else? That would be that she would like to do, but she's doing this for you because she loves you and wants to see you, fulfill your dreams. And so I think that's an important aspect that is not, and again, maybe in our condition, in our world, that we don't see that enough. For sure. Gotta appreciate mom and dad. That's for sure. I mean, my mom used to cart me around everywhere, and I appreciated it, but probably never told her enough as I was going through that junior golf process. I sure let her know when I played bad. There was no doubt about that one. I felt really, now, back in time, it's like, God, I was terrible when I played bad. It was awful, and so on. And, but she was always there and always, carting me around, doing what I needed to do to try to get better. And I sucked. And so it took me a long time to get better.
So we've talked a lot about practicing and some of the mindsets to get better as a golfer and as a junior. What about when you're playing? What's kind of the mindset that you would instill in your best juniors to be like, listen, this is how to handle adversity. This is how to stay focused. All the things that it takes to actually perform your best.
Yeah, it's always about doing your work. And so again, work ethic. It always goes back to work ethic. So now I'm on the golf course ready to compete. Now I need to do my work. What's your job when you get to the first tee, right? Is your job to think about what you're going to shoot? Is it your job to, to think about, oh, somebody just shot 68. How am I going to go shoot 68? And so you have to bring, all those things are distractions. So learning to control the distractions, or learning how to put the distractions aside. So whether you're a tour player, like I'm going to be meeting with a tour player tomorrow, and he's been struggling and missing cuts and so on. A great player, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And that's what we're going to talk about, is that what is distracting him, where he plays 14 holes like he's one of the best players in the world, and then he plays 4 holes like he's a 20 handicapper. What's going on there? And so it's the same thing for, let's say, a junior golfer. Is that, all right, what's the process that we need to go through? This is work now. It's fun work. So when I'm on the first tee, what am I thinking about, right? I want, let's say, my routine. I want to lick and pitch. I want to draw a picture of the shot I'm trying to hit, right? I want to go through my practice swing, and if I'm nervous, that's fine. Certainly, everybody has nerves, right? But have a nice picture of the shot that we're going to do. Make sure we take some swings and we're in the balance and good tempo. Tee it up and hit it, and then positive evaluation best you can. Even though, let's say, you hit it out of bounds or you hit it whatever, is that, look, I got to go through the process again. It's the old adage, right? One shot at a time. But it's so easy to project, and it's so easy to go back in time and say, I'm bad, I did this, I three putted the last hole, and I chili chunked the wedge or whatever, and so those are distractions. So how to bring all that back into the moment and being able to hit that shot you're trying to execute. I used to always say this when I caddied for Bryson. I caddied from a lot of events, is that, I would always say, are you ready? Are you committed? Yeah, I'm committed. All right, execute. And he'd look at me and go, yes, sir. And you could see it in his mind's eye. I'm committed for this moment. And he would do that, quite often. And so, and obviously really good at it at times. And so that was the one thing I would try to tell his caddies. And there was only one caddy in the end that really got it, which was Tim Tucker, who I believe is probably the best caddy on the planet, and who caddied for Bryson for a long time. Is that we would meet after every round, right? Bryson would go do his thing, we'd go have dinner and whatever, and talk about. He would ask me, how do I deal with him in this situation? How do I deal with him in this? How do I bring him back to focusing on what he needs to do in his tasks? What are some things I can say to him right before he hits the shots, right? So he stays in that moment, because it's easy to get distracted, and so in a lot of different ways. So I think that's a conversation you could certainly have with your child as you're playing. Is that, what distracted you today? What were the things that when you played that you felt like got out of your routines? Was it a certain hole? Was it a shot? Was it the person you're playing with? Because a lot of times kids go, I hate the kid I'm playing with. That's a distraction. Got to learn how to deal with that. You know. So those are things to me as a player that because it's not about the swing at that point. You know, and so, and I'm assuming that, let's say, we're talking to kids that actually can, that can play,
Sure.
break 80, whatever, and say, all right, how do I really focus on what I need to do? And then how do I do a post round evaluation, right? What do I need to improve? And so, guy, I had six wedges today, and the closest one I hit was 30 feet. Pretty sure you're not going to make any of those putts.
Ye There's a few things here I wanna touch on, but I wanted to just focus on the caddy side for a second, because a lot of parents are caddies for their kids right now.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about different clubs being in the player's quiver, to be able to pull out to do different shots. What are some sayings or something that you could put into the caddy's quiver that they could pull out to help get the average child back focused? Like, is there certain sayings? Is there certain things that the average caddy right now, parent caddy could use that you found to be helpful?
Well, I certainly think, how you, let's say, preparation, if they learn to prepare together, would be something that's really good to do. So if they get a practice round, it's like, okay, so what are some, again, a lot of this is learning how to communicate, right? And so preparation, I think, would be learning that, okay, in this par three, the prevailing wind tends to go, from 11 o'clock, and it's going to play 10 yards probably farther, those kind of things. And so, learning how to prepare in a way where the player goes, yeah, I like that information, because the parent can have tons of information and the kid goes, I don't even understand what you're talking about, right? And yet the parents like going, why don't you understand this? This is all important. In the end, the kids, you got to learn it. Learn if you learn that the kid is the boss in a good way, then you can take some of that information and say, look, you know what? He obviously likes the yardage to the pin. He likes the yardage past the pin to, the back of the green. He likes the idea, oh, it's elevated or downhill. And just the thought of what, the wind, and will the wind hurt me or help me, those kind of things. And that's it. And so, like Bryson wants to know air density, right? And he wants to know the air density throughout the whole day because he knows that affects how far a ball flies, right? And so, and it's easy to get that information, but I have kids and players that go, man, it's way over my head, even though it's easy. I have some players call me every morning before they go. They go, okay, give me every hour what the air density is going to be and wherever they're at, and so on. And so they've incorporated that over the last few years into their play, and they go, God, it's unbelievable. And then it's funny, now they become the conduit because now the team members want to know. Well, this kid's the number one player. It's like, well, what's he doing different? Well, he knows his air density,
Okay,
right?
but wait a second. How does air density affect this? So give just like an example. So what is air density? Is that the amount of
So air density,
humidity
like
that's in
when
the
you,
air?
yeah. So air density, there's an app. It's called shoot, what's the app called? Sorry, I'll give you the app in a minute. And
Sure.
so basically it gives you, it's a flying app. So if you fly an airplane, right? So obviously an airplane needs to understand where air density, how it changes, when it changes, and so on, because that'll affect lift and drop and so on. Same thing in a golf ball, right? And so let's say we'll just have a number, and let's say the baseline number is 1,000 air density. Okay, my normal 7-iron goes at 150 yards at 1,000 air density. So the next morning, I get to the golf course and air density is 0 because it's early in the morning, right? So for every 500 feet, the ball's going to go either 2% farther or 2% lower. So being that it was a
Meaning above
thousand,
sea
I'm
level?
going to hit the ball 4% shorter because it's now 0.
Sorry. So the 1,000 you said is in feet? I wasn't
It's
clear
just
with
air
that.
density. Yeah, it
Air
doesn't
density
matter. It's
is
just
in
it's a
feet.
number, right? It just makes
Okay.
it, yeah. It's
So
and
for
the app
every
is called UAV,
500,
by the way.
so if 1,000's a baseline, if it drops down by 500, your ball's going less 2%. And if it drops down by the full 1,000, it's 4%.
Yeah,
And
we have it sometimes where it drops 8%, even more, or goes up, like up in Colorado, right? So let's say I
sure.
hit my 7-iron 150, and I'm 1,000 here in Fresno. Go to Colorado, and it's 5,000 air density. Think about that for a second.
So how does air density relate to elevation or sea level?
Doesn't matter. Just
They're
doesn't matter.
independent of each other, but they
Correct.
would be working
Doesn't
together.
matter. Yeah, doesn't matter. That's the
Interesting.
cool part. So when you go to the ocean, like at Pebble Beach, and you're going, oh man, it's humid. I'm at sea level. How do I calculate? Right. Well, air density puts all that together because air density is all that matters. Right. If it's basically a higher density, the ball's going to stay in the air longer. Right. If it's a lower density, it's going to fall out of the air. That makes sense. And
Yeah, so,
so
so this app, do you put in your elevation and then it calculates
don't it's automatic. You just put your location where you're at. Like I can go right now. I can tell you what my air density is right here, right now, and I get it does it every minute, but I can do it every hour. I can see it change. So like a college player, he might tee off in the morning where it's 0. By noon, it's 1,000. By 3 o'clock, it might be 1,500 because they play 36 holes in a day. Make sense?
yeah.
So think about the difference of in the morning at 7 o'clock when they tee off versus they're playing the 12th hole at 3 o'clock. And now the air density is at 1,500 or 2,000. That's a big difference. So it'd be nice to know that. Say, oh, you look at it and you go, oh my, look at the air density now. I'm going to hit this 4% farther than I normally hit it. Yeah, you see? So
Uh, uh,
easy to make that. So it's a simple, it's just a number. That's the easiest way to do it because the app deals with all the altitude, the humidity, all that kind of stuff. So
that's fascinating. Um, and that's not even taking into account adrenaline, feeling better later in the round as well, and
correct,
all these other
correct.
variables
Yeah,
that
yeah,
affect
yeah. Lots of
distance too.
variables. But when you if you're a let's say a guy like Bryson, and then you have Dustin Johnson, then you have Bryson. Bryson might have 6 numbers that he's put on his little sheet, right? To come up with his base number that he's going to commit to, right? air density, uphill, downhill, grass type, all kinds of stuff, wind vectors, blah, 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 right? And so then you got Dustin Johnson that might only have three. Now, they might both come out with almost the same number, right? But in Bryson's mind, because of the way he thinks, if he's missing something, that gives him doubt. So he's just trying to take out the factors. That's what he is. Whereas Dustin is as well. He just thinks that all I need is these three or four and I'm good to go. Obviously works, right? And so it just, again, commit to what you're doing, own what you do, and believe in it. I mean, there's really, if you want to be a good player, that's what you have to do. If you're a kind of a guy that, like Tiger, for example, when he hits wedge shots, he just goes to the flag, right? Most players are always have a landing zone, how much the ball is going to drop and skip. Tiger was like, hey, I see the flag, and I kind of just give it he's hit it enough times where he knows I'm going to hit this one 10 feet short and it'll do its thing. But he only does the flag, which is very interesting, you know. And he'll say, well, it's kind of a feel thing. Well, no, he's hit the shot so many times that he sees a flag and it's 60 yards. His brain goes, yeah, but you need to land this 50. This is the way he works, just that simple. Whereas Bryson is going to go through many more iterations to come up with that landing zone.
So using Tigers versus Bryson's kind of process, that kind of leads me to your involvement with the golfing machine, and everybody has their own kind of unique swing and understanding that. I know nothing about the golfing machine. Can you give me just a grade 3 education? What is a golfing machine? How does that impact your swings, and why is it important?
So the golfing machine was written in the late 60s by a guy named Homer Kelly. He basically was kind of like, he called it the computer age to golf. So,
Hmm.
and what he did, he was an engineer. He took the fact that there were 24 basic components in the golf swing. There are 144 variations to those 24 components. And then there were four power accumulators and four pressure points um, within those components. And so understand, and that's the bottom basic line. Like, well, what's a power accumulator? Right arm drive. That's a power accumulator, right? Number two, a wrist, how the wrists you would either uncocking or going from radial deviation to ulnar deviation. That's a lever. So that would be number two. And so, and then left arm pulling off your chest or being thrown off your chest is the number four power accumulator. And so, it was an easy communication tool. I mean, I learned it in the mid 70s. And so I was fortunate. I was hanging out with, Bobby Clampett, good friend. He was like the Tiger Woods of my generation. I mean, everybody wanted to be like him. And so he was doing this golfing machine stuff. And fortunately, it was the guy, wasn't Homer, but it was the number one, the first authorized instructor was in Carmel, and it was like 3 hours away. So I went to him and learned a lot of the golfing machine stuff then. I was dyslexic, so it was very difficult. So you don't want to read the book for sure. It's a study manual. You have to look at it as a manual. Like if you were going to build an engine, that's how it's written. And so it's not like a how-to. If you read page 1 through page 50, that it's going to teach you, like the 5 fundamentals of Hogan or whatever. And so gives you some of the physics and geometry in golf, going to help you understand there. And so for me, let's say, for example, Bryson, when he learned it when he was 14, it was a good communication tool, for us. So we knew, okay, if we're going to work on component 16 or whatever, is this the variation you want? Right. And so obviously he was swinging on, quote, the one plane. We never really called it a one plane. We just called it a zero shifting motion. He set himself on one plane and he never shifted off of it. So a guy like Tiger was a double shifter. And so he would start on a hand plane. Actually, it was a triple shifter. He'd start on a hand plane, go up to what we call a turn shoulder, and then end up on an elbow plane. So there were three shifts in Tiger's motion, which is fine. It's like, okay,
And that's why when you see that like swing tracer, it's not just a clear
100%.
circle path. It actually kind of does almost like a elliptical, or does a little, because
Yeah,
it's
or
moving
yeah,
through
it's
those
going to
different
start
planes.
here, go up to here, and then end up here. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So All it is a language. It's like a computer language that makes it easy to, I would say most really good teachers understand the golf machine. Some certainly guys that are a little bit on the older side, Chuck Hogan, sorry, blank. A lot of them know the golfing machine. Martin Hall is on the Golf Channel. He's an authorized golf machiner, and not that they talk about it, but it's certainly a part of, you could hear in their language that it's certainly a part of the language of how they teach. And so, like, even Bryson, once he learned the golf machine, he says to me one day, he goes, "How come you haven't been teaching me this?" And I went, "Let me ask you a question. When was let's see, let's go through the four power accumulators. How long have I been talking about the four power accumulators?" He goes, "Oh, you've been teaching me the golf machine all along." Voila. You know,
50 years past his writing, does it still hold up? Like, would you still suggest
100%.
someone that's kind of that geek golf mind to learn it?
Yeah, it depends on how you learn it. Like, what I have to actually tell people how to read it. Um, and so, yeah, if you're a reader and you like the idea of the golf, breaking the golf swing down in a machine like format, I think we certainly are seeing more of it done anyway in the biomechanic world now.
Sure.
And so, but I think defining it a little bit better through the golfing machine to me is a good thing. I'm certainly guys like Brandel Shambley. I've known Brandel too a long time. Doesn't like the golfing machine. He thinks it's the worst book ever written. But there's certainly a lot of great players out there who have grown up and or applied the principles in the golf machine into their work. And the golf machine talked about the mind, the mind as a computer and how it works in chapter 14. And so, I stress that with a lot of people, read chapter 14 first. It's not a book that you read chapter 1 through, chapter 14. It doesn't work quite that way. So typically what I tell people is start in chapter 10, and that just goes over all the components. And that way they understand the components. It simplifies it. So
We're gonna see a surge in Amazon book sales for the golf machine after
yeah,
this.
yeah, you
There's
can
gonna
find,
be some people
yeah,
curious to get their
yeah.
hands on it.
It's a hard one to find for sure. I know the guy that owns the rights to it. He's very protective of who gets that for sure. I I mean, I probably order 50 books a year, go through 50, where I have students that go through them. So, how many stick it out, who knows? But, a lot of them will come back and ask questions. What about this? What about that? The
That's
cool
great.
part about it is that they can write, like, just like Bryson did, there's a section, chapter 12, where he wrote out his swing. He just said, here are my 24 components. That's what I want to do, and then that's what he practiced. It was pretty cool, and he goes, this is what I want to be. And his baseline is still pretty much there for sure. He would probably say he's moved on from that, but it is funny how many times people will come to me, hey man, I talked to Bryson, I'm a golf machiner. I saw him at the British Open, and I mentioned the golf machine. He goes, an hour later, we're still talking, and I was talking with Bryson for an hour about the golf machine. So there you go.
So if you want to speak Bryson's language, learn the golfing machine.
You could do it. Yeah, you could do it. So
I
yeah,
love it.
for sure.
I wrote down two things that I wanted to ask you about. You had mentioned a positive evaluation after a shot, and I wanted to get a little bit more into that. So what does that look like? What is a positive evaluation? How do we do that after a shot,
Uh,
especially if it's an errant shot?
yeah, I think let's say just start with putting, right, on the get go. And so some of your key elements in putting was, the read, number one, number two, speed, number three, intended line. If you're a really good player, you're going to talk about your launch. How was the launch, right? So if I hit a putt, I missed the putt. Instead of, I missed the putt, I'm a terrible putter, right? To be able to have a positive post evaluation would be, how was your speed? Oh, my speed was pretty good. It was foot by. Okay. All right. How about your intended line? You know what? I think I pulled it a little bit. Aha. Do you think the read was good? Yeah. If I would have hit it on my intended line, I think it would have gone in. That's a positive post evaluation of something. So if you did that, let's say at the end of the day, you go, wow, I had a little bit of trouble hitting my intended lines when I putted. Go onto the practice green and go work on your on your launch and how you're going to hit your intended line under, let's say, whether it's a gate drill or having an elevated string, or you can use the ultimate putting tool that I invented. Anything to get your ball going down the line. Or maybe it was speed. You know what? I really struggle with my speed control today. Well, then that's probably what you need to go work on the green after you're done. Or you know what, man, I wasn't getting the slopes at all today. I was missing my reads big time. Throw the putter over to the side, throw the ball to the side, and go work on how to read a putt, which again is a skill that a lot of people, they assume that they stick their fingers out, that's enough. And so if you're missing slope, or you're not calibrated correctly, go spend some time, getting your reads correct, and so on. And then do some, after you're done, go hit some one-off putts. All right, my intended line is good. My speed's good. I'm reading the putts really well. I'm seeing the ball go in the hole more often. Boom. All right, we're done. We'll get ready for tomorrow.
And then that leads into the post-round evaluation where you're realizing in the shots, and I'm assuming the key to this is to, as best as humanly possible, to stay non-judgmental about it's not good or bad. It's just okay, cool. I pulled the putt, the rest was good. And then if you do that with every aspect of your game from tee to green, then you kind of have a good idea of what to work on after the round.
In the
That
end, I think keep it. Here's how you should break it down. So obviously your tee shots, well, let's say with a driver or 3-wood. So I'm a fairways and greens guy. I will always be a fairways and greens guy, because if I'm hitting lots of fairways and hitting lots of greens, at the stress level is a lot less, right? So if I'm a person who hits 6 fairways around and hits 6 greens around, I'm having to rely on getting up and down all day long, man, I'm going to have a lot of gray hair when it's all said and done. And so I'm always going to stress that fairways and greens kind of thing. So the first step is making sure, can I hit 80%? I mean, when you're an amateur and playing, it needs to be at least 85% fairways hit. Even if you're hit it in the rough a little bit or whatever, but I don't hit it into the trees. I don't hit it out of bounds 4 times around. The goal is that basically when I hit my tee ball, I literally had 14 opportunities to hit it on the green in regulation. Okay, that's a good thing, even though, maybe you're not in the center of the fairway. So the next part that you should evaluate is your scoring clubs. And that would, let's say, be 8-iron down. And chances are you have at least 10 of those around. I would say at least 10. And I would call those holes money holes, because they're very, very, very important. There's what put money in your pocket. And so if you can evaluate and say, first of all, I didn't make any bogeys on money holes today. Boom, thumbs up. Awesome. Now you look at, all right, what were my proximities? Because if they're an 8-iron, 9-iron wedge, those are scoring clubs. You do not make putts outside of 12 feet, basically. So if I'm thinking they're a scoring club, then I think I can hit it inside 12 feet, right? Which, trust me, most people don't do. And so, but I can certainly evaluate, hey, you know what? I hit a couple of shots in there 15 feet, or less. And I made half of them. Okay, there's a thumbs up right there. That's good. Maybe that's 2 under. You didn't make any bogeys. You hit a couple of them close enough to make the putt. Out of those 10 holes, you were 2 under, right? And then you can start looking at the low hanging fruit. Man, if I could improve my 9-iron and wedge proximity a little bit, that could mean a lot maybe to me, right? That's low hanging fruit. Then you can say, all right, now those other 8 holes that I would have a 5-iron into the green, or a 5-wood or whatever. How do I manage those holes? It's really funny when I always look at, even Bryson was a great example. He always played those holes, the hard holes, under par. It was the money holes that at the end of the day were like going, are you kidding me? Right? You're over par. No wonder you're missing cuts, right? And so a lot of good players, they're that way. The driver 5-iron into the green. Why? Because the green's bigger. They hit it 50 feet. They 2-putt. They move on. They're like, yay, thumbs up. I'm feeling pretty good. And so, but if I have a wedge and I hit it 40 feet, now the intrinsic value becomes way more valuable. I hit it 40 feet. I'm pissed off. I hate life, right? I suck. Even though, wait a minute, that was closer than the 5-iron you just hit on the hole before. Do you see how it kind of works? And
100%.
so I'm always amazed that guys don't view that. And then when I go down the range and I watch guys hitting a lot of drivers, a lot of 5-irons, I never understood that. Why aren't these guys working 100 times harder on their scoring clubs? But you could go down the range. I could go down the range right now at Oakmont. I guarantee you, hardly anybody's out there hitting wedges. They might have to be hitting shorter wedges because they're going to be missing so many greens, right? But their scoring clubs are so valuable, and they just don't do it. It's amazing to me. It's not to say they're bad at it. They're obviously the best in the world at it. But when you really evaluate their stats, let's say the number one player in the world from 70 to 130 yards, I think he averages about 13 feet proximity. Closest guy to him is like 27. That's how good Scotty is versus the field on those shots alone, right? And so you would think somebody would start figuring that out. We need to get that better. That needs to be closer. If I'm going to be closer to him, that has to be better, you know. And like I said, he's double the closest guy to him. So, and again, it's easy stuff. It's all right there in front of you. Stats don't lie; they never lie, but they're very difficult to look at. Yeah, that's the other thing too. Condition your player, your kid, your child, whatever, somehow in a positive way to look at the after round and go through the round in a good way. Not like, why did you do that stupid shot on 8? Right. And so I think learn, like I said, stats do not lie. Learn how to do that early on to where they learn to love that information. So I'm a decade. I love decade. I love Scott Fawcett. You know, Bryson was one of his first guys that he's kind of worked with at SMU. Um, and I think if you're going to go to college, you need to learn decade because every major college, they all use decade. So I would start using that as early as possible. It's a little pricey as an app, but it'll at least help you understand your game a little bit and might help you plan out your game a little bit as well. So a little promo for Scott. I used to do everything by hand. So, you know, to me, it's easy. It's an Excel spreadsheet or whatever. So
What
sorry,
is
sorry to ramble.
no, are you kidding me? This is that post round evaluation, helping our child learn to love that process. I often hear the car ride home is the thing that so many athletes, not just golfers, but athletes in general, they dread with their
Yeah.
parents. How do we do that then? So how do we look at that data? When's the best time to
Right.
evaluate it? How do we foster that love for not only the hard work, but then at
I,
the end of
I
it,
would I would say
how to get better?
never ever do it in a car ever. Right. I'll never forget one tournament. Bryson wanted to talk about it in the car, and then I made a comment, and then he calls me Captain Obvious. Right. I mean, again, because we're in the car, it's like well, Captain Obvious. Of course, I knew that. Whatever. And so, but again, there's times where he felt like I'm the parent and he's the child, whatever. But it's very, very difficult. It was hard to get Bryson to, hey, let's like a Formula One race team, right? They all get together. They start talking about what were the things that we missed, what could be better, how did the car feel, blah blah blah. It's the same. I've always viewed a golfer, a really good elite player, as a Formula One car, and so and they need to be the casino, never the gambler. So that's another problem. Is that if you're if you're the gambler, you're going to lose. It's inevitable. You are
What do you
going to
mean by
lose.
that?
Well, the casino always wins over time. Correct? They
Yes.
know they're going to win. If they didn't, then there would be no casinos around. The thing I taught Bryson early on was to never be the gambler. Right? Learn to be the casino. Learn to make decisions based on over time you will win versus I'm here in this moment, I'm going to gamble, I'm going to risk everything, blah blah blah, because there's so many intrinsic values to a shot that you're making a decision on. You look at guys like Phil Mickelson, who was predominantly the gambler over his career, whereas if he played probably differently, he probably would have won 4 or 5 more majors for sure. But he liked the risk, he liked the gamble. And over time, in certain situations, it definitely cost him. Whereas in what I promote at my place is understanding how to do things, and when you're playing, let's say over time, it works in your favor. You're not going to make every 10-footer, right? You have to understand that. I am not going to make 100 in a row 10-footers. It's impossible for whatever reason. But what I can do is put myself in a position to where if I'm reading the putt correctly, if I'm controlling my speed correctly, my intended line correctly, over time I will win. Over time I will make my percentage of my putts. And so versus I'm not going to go practice my speed control. I'm not going to go practice my intended line. I'm just going to go hit some random putts and blah blah blah. You are now the gambler. Guess what? I guarantee you, you're going to lose. There's no doubt in my mind, right? And it's the same thing how you end up playing. Like there's certain ways. Like when I read a putt and I teach my players how to read a putt, there's a way I teach it to where over time it's a very simple process, very quick, very fast, and over time, if you trust it, you will make your fair share of putts. Okay, and so I don't have to. Oh, wait a minute. The green's now step 12, and oh, it's a
What is that
2.3
pro? Mike, I'm fascinated. What is that process? How do you quickly read a green? Because I am horrible at reading a green, and I have no idea how to teach it to anybody else.
So all right, here's my cup, right? There's a
Yeah.
low point and a high point.
Okay.
Makes sense? So this is a
Yeah.
big flat pancake that's tilted,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
For every foot I'm away from the hole, it's going to be 1 inch of aim from the center of the hole up the straight putt, right? Right to my nose. So if I'm 10 feet away, anywhere around this hole right here, it's going to
Yes.
be 10 inches of aim up this straight putt, otherwise known as the gravity vector. Okay. So when I walk up to a hole, let's say I'm 15 feet away, I walk it off. I know I'm 15 feet. I know where the high point is at the hole location. My starting point for my aim or my aim point is going to be from the center of the hole up 15 inches. I can trust that. I can
So
expand
sorry.
it.
That's it. That's if it's an uphill putt.
Doesn't matter. Downhill, uphill, doesn't matter. It's the same aim point. So if I'm plotting it right here, it's how you fly an airplane, right? So if I'm plotting that right here at the top of this hole, let's say this is 10 inches right here. So I'm 10 feet away. I can be 10 feet below the hole at 4 o'clock, at 3 o'clock, at 11 o'clock, at 2 o'clock. It's the same aim point. So anytime you're sticking your fingers out doing that, or I'm giving you a specific number, the assumption is you have perfect club speed control and that you have perfect intended line control. And number three, you have perfect launch control. I don't know of anybody that really has that. To me, one of the best in the world at controlling speed is probably Bryson because he works on his speed control unbelievably hard. And he's been doing that since he was 14 years old. One of the only guys that does what he does. So, but anyway, all right. So over time, what I found out, right? Because I have specific numbers. I got numbers coming out of my ears. And you could stick your finger out, whatever. But again, closer, longer, you got problems there, right? And so, and again, if you know that, hey, you know what? At 4 o'clock, I tend to hit the ball three. I tend to hit the ball. I tend to hit the ball 3 feet by. So I'm gonna expand it right farther away because my aim's gonna be shorter. You see what I'm saying? But nobody knows
Eh,
that, right? Because most people don't ever evaluate what their tendencies are. That's why the stroke game number on putting is so skewed. It's ridiculous because you can't tell me 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and 2 o'clock. Those all have the same values at 10 feet. No way, right? That's why everybody. Oh, if I hit the ball 30 yards farther, it's way better than if I improve my putting. No, if you learn strokes gained correctly and you improve your putting, it way outweighs hitting the ball 30 yards farther. I'm sorry. No doubt about it. Plus, nobody ever can work at it that hard to hit it 30 yards farther, unless maybe like a Bryson. Does that make sense? So every time I've taught that principle to a pilot, usually before I even get the last part, they go, I got it, because that's how I fly my airplane. Right? As long as they know where the high point, as long as you know where the high point is at the hole location, right? And that's usually pretty easy to see at 1.5% to 3%. Not a problem. Right. And you could say, well, wait a minute, what if there's more slope? Wouldn't there be more aim? Theoretically, yes, if you're truly controlling your speed control. But the if you just trust the number, because your tendency to pull on certain angles, your tendency to push at certain angles, and your tendency to hit soft at certain angles and your tendency to hit hard at certain angles, it all averages out. If you're looking at a putt and you're going, okay, that's not enough aim, then what's your answer? Oh, I'm just going to expand that aim until it looks good to me. Yep, you're done. Now hit the putt.
Okay, Mike, I want to see, like, I want to understand this. And so for those that are just listening right now, Mike was holding up a cup and he's tilting the cup so that you can see, as if simulating a cup in the ground, where the high point is on the cup. So if I've got a cup too. So if it's a left to right putt and I find the high point on the putt and I'm on the side, I'm still aiming at that high point.
Yep,
And
doesn't
then you
matter.
expand, and then for every foot or foot and a half I'm back from it, it's an inch.
Yeah, for every foot away from the hole, it's 1 inch of aim from the center of the hole, which is the bullseye, up the straight putt, or up that high point, or up that gravity vector, whatever you want to call it. It's
Interesting.
physics. It has to work.
Interesting. Okay, I think I understand this then. So
Right.
if I was
Way
to visually take,
way better than this, right?
yeah,
Even though
yeah.
everybody does it.
Okay, so let me just try and visually, because I want to get this. If the top of that, so I figure out the top of it, and I realize it, then I just mentally expand a line from the center of the hole up to create. So now,
Right.
if you've got a hole and you've got a line coming out of it, let's just say a foot and a half or whatever it is, I'm aiming to that line. And if I
100%.
aim at that, if I'm aiming at that line, gravity will bring it back into the center of the hole.
Yep.
I have never heard that before.
Yep.
Okay, Mike,
That's why there's nobody better than me.
you took the words right out of my mouth. You've got
Right.
three
Sure. Yeah.
distinctions now. You got three distinctions. You have taught me more in this. So first of all, you have the record now of the longest podcast, which is a testament to you and the knowledge
Appreciate
and
it.
the information that you're sharing. So congratulations on that. You
I
also
haven't
have
even
the
told you all the good stuff yet. So
well, that's gonna be round two. You also have by far the coolest office that I've ever seen.
yeah,
So
appreciate
maybe
it.
just step away from a side, or yeah. For those that are watching, this office is just look at that. Just it is the perfect Club Pros like office. That's
No
exactly
doubt
what I
about
would
it.
imagine it would look like. And you've taught me more than anything else. So three distinctions, three awards. Listen, Mike, if people want to get into your ecosystem, if they want to learn directly from you, come visit the tent. How do they find you? What's the best way for
Well,
them
the
to
only bad
contact
thing is if they come to the tent, they tend to not leave. So that's the only bad thing. But no, you certainly can reach out to me, MikeSchy.com. I'm easy to find. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have as well. If you want to come visit the tent, always welcome to come visit the tent. Everybody should come see it at least once. Preferably, probably not in July because it's like 115 degrees here. But a great place. Kids are always around, hitting balls, practicing, talking all kinds of craziness and golf. So love to have kids around for sure.
Mike, you're an absolute powerhouse in the game, powerhouse of information, and man, this was enjoyable. I am looking forward to round two
Appreciate it.
shortly. So
Anytime,
thank you so
man.
much.
Anytime. Love talking golf, obviously. So
Yeah, appreciate you.
you
Thank you
got it.
now.